Hi guys, welcome to the first in a series of video tutorials I'm going to start doing on music production. Trying to cover a few different areas that I hope might be useful to some people out there. Today we're actually going to be looking at synthesis and creating your own synth patches. The patch we're actually going to be making today is a sort of analog Moog inspired lead synth sound which you hear in a lot of R&B music at the moment. One place you can hear it is in the Ryan Leslie version of Maybachs and Diamonds. The patch we're actually going to be making sounds like this. Now you've probably heard that in a few places before. It's a very sort of common sound and it gets used a lot, so I thought it would be a good one to start with because it's actually very simple to make. As you can see on the screen, we're obviously going to be using Native Instruments Massive today to create this patch. You could pretty much make it in any soft synth as it's just two saw waves and a filter and a couple of effects, so it's nothing too complicated. So the first thing we're going to do is initialize. So File, New Sound. So we've got a blank canvas to start working with. Now as I said before, it's basically just two saw waves going into a low pass filter. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn on oscillator 2. So we've got oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. And we're going to select from the menu square saw 1 and square saw 1 for the other one. Now if you haven't used Native Instruments Massive before, it's actually a wavetable synthesizer, which means it's got a bunch of different waveforms stacked in a big table for each sound. So using the wavetable position, you can cycle through all of the sort of blended different waveforms in the table. So obviously all the way to the left, as you can see, is square, and all the way to the right is saw, and everything in between is a blend between those two. So the first thing we're going to do is just to push the pitch up just a tiny bit by 0.2 of a cent, and we're going to push this one down by 0.2, so we're just detuning it ever so slightly with itself. And that's literally all you've got to do for the oscillators. We're going to come back to it in a minute just to modulate them slightly to get a kind of analog feel. But the next thing we can do is move on to the filters. So we're going to go to the filter section and we're going to choose low pass 4, which is a 24 dB low pass filter. Now if I play now, you can hear that the filter's enabled. So we're actually going to bring the cutoff up and we're going to bring the resonance right down. Now if I disable the filter, you can hear that we're actually knocking off a lot of the high end with this filter, which makes it a lot smoother. Now the next thing we're going to do is just set up the amplifier envelope. So we'll go to envelope 4, which is linked to the amp up here. As you can see, the number 4 is already up there. That's actually standard in the initialized patch as well. And we're just going to make a few changes here. We're going to bring the attack down slightly, and we're going to push the decay up, and we're also going to bring the release up slightly as well, something like that, and bring the attack down slightly a bit more. So just got a bit more attack to it and a little bit more release. Okay, that's it for the envelope. The next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to oscillate the two main oscillators with a low frequency oscillator. So what we're going to do is go to LFO5 and we're going to push the crossfade curve up because we only want to use the top waveform, which is a sine wave, and we're going to bring the rate right down and push the amp down as well. Basically what we're trying to do is to emulate kind of an analog circuit slightly by detuning the oscillators just a tiny bit over time so they don't sound constantly at the same pitch. So I'm going to click on this little D-pad symbol here, and I'm going to click in this box here, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other oscillator. So we've assigned this low frequency oscillator to the pitch of oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. I'm just going to push this up by clicking and dragging up to 0.10 for both of them. Now if I play the sound now, you can hear we're actually modulating it ever so slightly, which kind of gives the appearance of an analog circuit and kind of takes the edge off it a little bit. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do now is look at the voicing tab. In here we're actually going to change the unisono to 3 because we want 3 voices. I'm going to change it to monophonic and legato. Now I'm going to turn the pitch cutoff on. This basically spreads out from the central note. So what we're going to do is bring this up just a tiny bit. You're not actually going to see any white lines on the left hand side of it, but it'll give you this sound. Let's bring this up a little bit more maybe. As you can see, we've got a lot more width to it. And we're also going to set up the pan position as well. And I'm going to drag this just to the right of mono to give us a bit of stereo field as well on it. As you can see, because it's on monophonic and legato, we're getting the portamento as well. Or glide, it's more commonly known as. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is sort that out. So we're going to go to the oscillator tab. And we're going to make a couple of changes here. We're going to change this to rate instead of equal. And we're going to select mono up here. And we're actually going to change some things here. So we're going to push this one up slightly to give us slightly more rate. And we're going to push this one down a little bit. Now, as you can see, these are both connected to this macro controller down here, which is actually assigned to the mod wheel. In the initialization patch, the mod wheel's set up on vibrato already, so you won't need to do that. As you can see, 1, 1, and it's linked to a number 1 down here. So that's going to give us our nice vibrato effect when we push the mod wheel up as well. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is the effects section. The first thing I'm going to do is add a classic tube, and I'm going to bring the wetness down a little bit. I'm going to bring the drive right down as well. I have to bring down the main volume a little bit as well, otherwise it might clip. And without. It's a very subtle effect, but it's just giving us a little bit more grit than that. The next thing I'm going to do is add a sync delay. So add delay synced, and you want 416 on the left and the right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the dry wet right down and push the feedback up a little bit. We're getting a nice set of delays after we let go of the note. And that is basically it for the sound. We're actually going to add a tiny little bit of EQ, and I'm going to knock the high end off just a tiny bit. Just a couple of millimeters on that. And now if you play, that should give you the kind of sound that we created at the very beginning. So I hope this was some use to you guys. I know there's tons and tons of dubstep and techno and house synth tutorials on YouTube, so I thought I'd do something a little bit different, seeing as I don't produce that kind of music. So anyway, I hope this was useful to you guys, and stay tuned for the next one.